How many types of access modifiers are you aware of? Anyone? Any access modifier?
Private, public, and protected.
Yes. Private and public and protected, right? So can you tell the difference between them? And there is one more thing, default. 4 access modifiers are there, right? Cool. So okay, my bad. Okay, so what are the packages in Java? First of all, we need to know regarding this. What is a package in Java? See, even over here by default, see right now why no one takes care of this thing. Even I'm not going to teach this thing because it's not important, because id takes care of this thing itself, right? Because over here you can see package is there, right? Itself, we don't have to indulge anything. I mean, we don't have to do anything with this. So what is a package, right? Package is nothing but just another terminology for the folder structure, right? Whatever we have inside the Java, right? Inside the Java folder, if you'll see org batch, right? So it is a folder path, right? It is a folder path. If you find the Java folder, inside it, if we have org and then batch, right? Org and then batch, then there is a package called access modifier. So this is a folder, right? Access modifier. And then this access modifier is having the nodes class is in this folder, right? So that's it. So even we can check it in the Java folder. We can open it, right? See, this is a folder, right? Java. Inside it there is a org batch, no folder, then batch folder, right? Then access modifier folder. In this there is a nodes.java, right? So this is it. Package is nothing but the folder structure, right? inside the inside the Java package or the Java folder. So the folders is called packages in Java, and it start in the Java, it start with from the Java folder. Cool. So we call them just packages. All right, we require, of course we are going to use the terminology packages now from now onwards. Cool. So in the notes we already know that there are different access modifiers, and there will be one more overriding thing that we are going to cover today. So there is a public, right? Public we have seen already, right? This over here public, we have seen this multiple times. Public means then accessible from any package. Cool. Does not matter where you are, right? Where you are, that means that if I'm inside access modifier package and someone is in the class object type package, then that particular class can access this class, right? So public methods, variables, or the classes can be accessed from everywhere if I mark them public, right? Now another one is default. Default says that it can be accessible within the package. So if I say that inside the access modifier package, I'm defining some class to be default, or I'm defining some method to be default, that particular method cannot be accessed from this class element package. Cool. We are going to see that in practical as well. And then protected. Okay, protected is little different. It works with inheritance. It says that this thing can be accessed within the package but also outside the package, but with the constraint that child classes. Outside the package within child classes. Cool. And the last one will be private. Private says, private, first thing, private keyword is not, I mean, we will see where we can use this thing, right? It says that anything annotated with a private keyword can be accessed within the class only. We cannot access it them outside the class. One thing. Next thing we need to know that where we can use these variables, right? These access modifiers. So they will be public protected. Okay, one thing, I need to just cut it and I will paste it here, right? Public, protected, and default, and the private, right? And over here will be at the top will be class level and the method level, right? So method level will be same as if it's eligible with the method, it will be eligible with the variables as well, right? So public can be used with class, right? We have been using it, so we already know, right? It can be used with the class. Public can be used with the method, right? We are already doing this, right? Now comes protected, right? We can see by adding the protected at here. So see, when I'm writing public, it's completely fine, right? And let me write the public variable as well. Public int equals to 10, right? Public variable is access payable, right? No errors. If I write it to be protected, no errors, right? But if I try to write it over here, then you can see it will say that protected modifier is not allowed here, right? So protected cannot be used with class. Cool. But with methods, yes. Cool. Now default. Default, we if we try to write default over here, right? Default. Again, default keyword will not be allowed because default is, I mean, we cannot use default. Default is like it is, I mean, if I don't write anything, if we don't write public, right? Public means accessible from anywhere, right? If I remove this public, it will be considered as default, right? So it's like yes, but not, no need to type, right? It will be by default. We don't need to explicitly mention, right? Explicit mention. And now can we use with methods? Now with methods it little tricky. Protected default, because see, if you try to use this protected, this default with method, let me create a method over here, public void m1, right? Completely fine. We have been we have been creating this m1 method from the very start, right? AI-m1. But if I try to write it as default, then there will be an error, right? Again, extension methods can only use within an interface, right? Okay, cool. It's already said it, right? This thing I cannot use it over here, but same thing right now, exactly if I copy it, treat it exactly like this, then I cannot use it right over here. But I'm going to delete it in a while. This file, like I want to create an interface, and IA interface we annotate with I just to make sure that it's an interface. If I paste it over here, in interface defaults are allowed. Cool. When I'm writing an interface, there I need to mention the default. In the normal class, in a class, it's not allowed to mention default, because like the class level, like at the class level, if I don't write anything, then it will be treated as default. Same thing will happen with the class. If I don't write anything with a method, it will be treated as default. I don't have to explicitly mention it, right? But in the interface things are different, so over here we can make it as default, right? So interface we are going to cover later on, so that thing will be taken care later as well. So let me delete this interface. So what we have seen, that the default keyword, the default we cannot use with method explicitly, right? So with both, so this also, yes, it works, but no need for explicit mention for class, right? But need explicit mention for interfaces. Cool. So that's the difference. Now the private, right? Private with the definition calls that it can be used within the class, right? So at the class level it cannot be used, right? So where I will use not allowed here. So by definition says it can be used within the class. How can I write it in the class level, right? So private not used with the class level, it will be used in the method level. So method level is equivalent to the variable level as well. Cool. This thing, right? Clear, or have any doubts? Because we are going to see the practical interaction with of these things. Anyone having any doubt?
No, sir.
Okay, cool, great. So let's move and start writing like public modifier. So right now I'm going to write a class, right? A. Okay, no, I will name them, right? Public class. So this class is public, right? So I want to, okay, no, my bad. I will create a method public class m. Okay, no, this is a constructor. I will create m1 method only, right? Everywhere, from everywhere, and this out, and we will say that public class m1 method, right? Public class and plus m1 method. Okay, and what we can do, instead of doing this, we can, what we can do, get class dot get name. Cool. That, okay, the, anyone, have anyone seen this thing before except Kishore? Okay, so what happens with get class, we will get the class, right? So what is the class that we are using? The public class, right? And then get name, we will get the package and the name of the class, if we're going to do this, right? So we already getting the string, right, with package name and the class name. Okay, and okay, I can ask for the canonical name as well. So public and void, right? So what will happen, this will provide me the class name, and then I can say that okay, this is the m1 method of that particular class. Cool. So let me run, and now just see the package, right? This is in the public modifier package, right? Public class, and in the access modifier package I'll create my runner, and over here I will try to access outside it, this package, it is inside this package, right? I'm trying to access it outside the package. So public class equals to new public class, right? And the public class dot m1 method. So if I try to run it, what I get, entire class name and then hyphen m1, right? Visible?
Yes.
All right, cool. So now public class m1 method is accessible, right? Because that method is also public, that this method is also public, right? So I can access it from anywhere, right? So at the class level, if we go to the nodes, the class level is only two, right? Public and default, right? So that means if I just create a class in the default modifier, I will create a default class, and I am going to copy paste the same thing, right, over here in the default class m1 method. I'm going to copy paste it. Cool. So the name will be provided. Okay, so the name will be provided over here directly by the default class and m1 method, right? If I try to access it. So if this method is a private public, we know that I can access it, right? If default class equals to new default class, right? And default class dot m1. Cool. If I run it, then we will get default class m1 method as well, right? Visible?
Yeah.
Okay, so the thing is, but the class we have made it as a default, right? So I have to remove, if I remove this public and try to run again, then I will get the error. The default class is not a public. Cool. So cannot be accessed from outside the package. Visible?
Yeah.
If it's a visible, cool. So I
Yeah.
cannot, cause this is accessible, cannot be accessed outside the package, right? So that means if my runner was inside this package, then there should have been no error, right? Right, I just moved the runner inside the default modifier package, right? So okay, let me comment it out. Okay, let me just copy paste this error over here. Okay, and the error is in line number, not this one, right? Error is in line number 12. So I'll just come, okay, line number 3, import, I'm unable to import it, right? It's showing that the error is in line number 3. I'm even unable to import. So let me just, okay, do this thing and this thing as well, and over here mentioned that we cannot access. Cool. So now what I can do in the inside this runner, right? So over here, because this public class can be accessible from everywhere, right? And default class, right now I'm inside which package? I'm inside the default package, right? This runner is in which package? Default modifier package, right? And the default class is in which package? Default modifier package, right? So if I run this now, then I will be able to access it, right? Even though my default class is default, right? By default access. Any doubts? Hello, I'm audible?
Yeah, yes, sir. No, sir, no
Okay,
doubts.
it's clear, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, cool. So we have, okay, let me change the name of the runner as well. So class level access modifier runner, cool. Now I'll create another runner. So it will be method level access modifier, cool. Inside this now what I'm going to do, the class will be public, but the methods I will change, keep on changing. For example, the default class over here, right? This is the default class. So this is a default class, but I will make it public. For this example, I will not change it. So I will create another class with default method. Cool. Oh, I can do one thing. Okay, okay. I can do one thing. I can within the package, outside the package. Cool. Okay, okay. So let's create a single class, and this will be in the private, not protected. Okay, and model. Let's take model, because this is how we write in the production ready. Okay, not class. Okay, let me write a package model. Inside this package, I will write a class A. Cool. Where is my runner? My runner is inside the access modifier package, right? So inside the model, I will create a class A, and this class A will have different methods, right? First thing is public void m1. Cool. So out a hyphen m1, and this one will be, this is public, right? So I mention as well public method. Cool. So this method is public. So similarly, I'll create m2 method. M2 method I will keep protected. Cool. So I will create another method. This is m2, and this is protected, and I will create a private, not default methods, m3 default method I will create, and it will be default, and then I will create a method private void m4 sysout a hyphen m4, and this method is private, right? So by definition, if I create an object of a and then a new a, right? So I need to check, because we have created so many a's, we need to check from where we have to take, right? Access modifier model we need to take, right? So right now we are here. So it's obvious that if I try to call method m1, then okay, it will be printed, right? We are aware of it, because it's public, it can be accessed from anywhere, right? A hyphen m1, it's there. Cool. What if I will try now to access m2 method? M2 method is protected, right? So if I run it, then there will be error, because protected method can be accessed only inside the child classes, right? Isn't it? We have in the notes we have written it, right? So protected can be accessed. Where am I? Yeah, okay, protected within the package, but we are not within the package, right? We are not in the model package, we are outside the model package. So what is the another condition? But also outside, okay, outside the package, but within the child classes only. Cool. So a is not inside, I mean this method call, we want to access m2, right? But m2 can be accessed only inside the child classes, and this our class public method level access modifier runner is not a child class, right, of a, so we are not able to access it. Over here has a protected access, so we cannot access it. Cool. What about the m3? If I try to call a.m3, then also I cannot access it because it's public and cannot be accessed outside the package. Right, we have already seen this with the class as well. With class also I cannot access outside the package. All right, okay, now the final item, a.m4, right, this thing cannot be accessed outside the class. I can access it only inside the class, not even in other classes within the same package. So it's the most restricted access modifier. So again, also if you try to run it, there will be an error. M4 has a private access, right? So that's it. So anyone, any doubt till now? So if we are outside the package, we can only access the public method only. Cool. If you are not extending or doing anything. Anyone, any doubts till now? All right. So let's dive deep into now. The interview question comes from here. We will start the interview questions. And there is only one tricky interview question, otherwise everything is way too simple. And it will be of protected access. Protected access, and then there is another interview which will be associated with overriding, but it's not a part of OOPS, it's a part of Java. So overriding access privilege. All right, so okay, yeah, only two questions are important, right? And the thing is, we don't know this question completely, all right, but we need to know what can, I mean, what we can do with these things. So important one, more important one is overriding privilege. Protected one, if you don't know, I mean, it's not usually asked, but one needs to know how it internally works. All right, so over here I have a class A. All right, so now that we have been aware that how I can use this thing. Okay, class A I already have, right? So now I want this this protected interview access. I want to access this thing. Okay, where is this? I want to access this a.m2, right? A.m2 I want to access because a.m2 cannot be accessed, right, outside the child classes. Outside the package, only child classes we can access it, right? So one thing I want to check, that runner, cool. Inside this runner, if I write this and this, right, there will be an error, right? It is showing an error that okay, it cannot be accessed outside the class because it has the protected access. So in the child class only we can access it, right? So if I extends the class A, right, because it's of class A, right, a method of class A, right? So now the protected m2, now if I run, because I have extended the class A, now what will be the output if I remove this thing and try to run it? What will be the output?
Oh, it is a child class, so it should be accessible.
Okay, everyone agrees with this, right? All right, I don't even expect this thing, right? The answer is there will be an error. The thing is, and now let me show you another thing. So there will be an error, right? Over here I'm not able to access it. It's saying that it has the private protected access, right? Now if I write public void m2, right, and okay, m2 is the name of this, okay, my bad, m1, right, and inside this if I write m2, right, there is no error over here, right? No error, right?
Yeah.
Cause and m2, which m2 it will access? It will access a's m2, right? And
Yeah.
even a.m2 if I'm doing the, okay, there is, I mean, it's alternatively what I can do because this is a static method, that's why I cannot access it directly, right? So now this m2, if I try to call, then what will happen, that m1 method, this object runner method. Okay, so what I'll do, I will, this is a confusing one, right? Runner equals to new runner, and now if I'll say that runner dot m2 is there, right? Let me remove this thing. So what I'm doing, there is there m2 method in the runner. This is the runner class. Is there m2 method anywhere? Not, right? Not, right?
Yeah, no.
Okay, let me remove this as also. Let me comment out this one also, right? And if I run this, then a2 m2 method is called, right? So why this a2 is not accessible by, but we are able to access it in this manner? How is this possible? Cool. The reason is, let me tell you. Over here, what we are doing, I'm trying to access over here. Over here, I'm trying to access m2 method, right? Using a's object, right? Using a's object, I'm trying to access, right?
Yeah.
But the thing is, a is, this a we are extending, right? What usually happens when we extend? These all methods, these all methods, we get inside this class, right? Inside the runner class, right? Inside the
Yeah.
runner class, we get all these methods, right? But the thing is, we get inside the runner class, right? We get it inside the runner class, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But are we utilizing it? Because we are trying to access from you, from this, from the reference variable of a, right? Not from the runner. We are trying to access it from a's object, and inside the a object it will be hidden, right? Inside the a object it will be hidden because it's protected. Okay, doubt, right? The thing
Yeah.
is, think it in this manner, that inside a, all right, inside a, okay, if I remove this, the error is justified to you, right? If I remove this thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes. So the thing is, what has changed? Why it's not accessible if I remove the extents? Because m2 method, right? A has already said that, okay, I'm not going to make available my m2 method outside the class, right? Is it right? The statement is right, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Just 1 second. Okay. So A is saying that, okay, my method m2 cannot be accessed, right? I won't allow access of my m2 method. Cool. So, but this m2 method can be accessible inside the child classes, right? And the child classes is run. We can make the child class as runner. Okay. Instead of making it a runner, what can I do? I should create another class over here. B, cool. Now it will be with B. It will be more manageable, or extend, say, cool. So the thing is, okay, I need to mention which A. Okay, model A. Import this. All right. So now B, I have a B object, right? This is fine, right? It will throw an error, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Now the question is, I mean, now you think that inside the B, if I want to access m2 method, I can access, right? If I want to access m1 method, I can access m2 method over here, right? Super.m2. Let's do one thing. Super.m2, right? Super means we have covered the super in this man, right? So I'm trying to access a.m2 and m2 method is protected, right?
Yeah.
So see what and inside the runner, if instead of writing a, if I'll do b equals to new b, and b dot, okay, m1 is there, cool, b dot m1, then it will call the super method m2, right? So a hyphen m2 is called, right? Let me just uncomment this. So now only one output will be there, right? A hyphen m2. How it happened? B dot m1 is calling super dot m2, right? and it's accessible, right? So in the child class it is in the child class, because we is the child class, m2 method was accessible, right? This statement is true, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But the thing is, if over here m2 method is accessible, even if I don't write super, then also it's fine, just to make sure that I'm calling the super method. That's why I have written super. Then inside this method, if I try to create an a object, and then if I try to call a.m2, there will be an error, because the thing is, you cannot access, even you are not trying to, this is called accessing from the inside the child class you are accessing, right? And this is, you are trying to access inside the child class but using a object will never allow you to access. Difference, are you, I mean, is it more, is it better than before example?
Yeah, but it is an object of its own class, right?
Why it is an object of its own class? This is okay, a, right?
Huh.
So cool, yes. Now see, okay,
No, I mean it should be able to access its own
no no
class, is
no
what I
no
mean.
no 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 see, the thing is, whenever I do this thing, a equals to new, right, it remains as private. It's instead of protected, it remains as private in its own class. For outside the classes, for if this outside the package it remains as a private. It, this method will work as a outside the class, it will act as a private method, and it won't be visible to you. You need, I mean, private method we cannot access, right, directly, right, because its visibility will exist within the class itself, right? This a it has a private method also, right? This private
Yeah.
method,
Yeah.
we cannot access it outside the out access, we cannot access it anywhere, right, outside this class.
Yes, yes.
So if you go outside the class, outside the package, if you go, I mean, this is also, this case is also with the same thing. You cannot access with using the ace object, because it will be it's going to be treated as private if you are going to try to access it using the object. You can just use it by extending the class. Then you can use it internally, you can use it, right? Externally you cannot use it. For example, if this thing, right, I'm trying to access it using object, right, and I'm trying to use it as from an object, and that too outside the package, right?
Yeah.
So it will be treated as a private method. See, if I'm doing the dot, only m1 method is visible, right? m2 method is not visible, not the default method is visible. So within, if even if it's the same class, I cannot access it inside the same class, I cannot access it with the dot operator using the object reference, because this thing become, I mean, if you try to think from the perspective of how I'm going to implement it, because public private, this thing is of Java, right? It's not of some other language. This access modifier, you will find it on only in Java. This is not something that is common like oops. So how difficult it's going to be to make a check, and to put a check on the reference variable as well, and to check whether this method is being called from the parent or not. I have to do it for every method, right? Whether it's doing the extend or not.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, if you are having any doubts, I mean, it's this thing is little complicated, but it's going to take some time. You have to do it again and again and try to think about it, then only you will get it. It takes some time, but the thing is, you can think it in this way, that protected methods outside the package works as private method only. You cannot access it outside the method using the dot operator. You can outside the package, you can use it only within the class. So if you try to create an object of it, object will not provide you the access to that particular method. What you can do, if you want to access the m2 method, you can inherit the class, and then without the, I mean, without this thing, you can access it directly, because it will come over here. This m2 method will come over here, and it will be, instead of protected, it will be working in terms of visibility, it will work as a private, right? That's how it works. What does it mean by this? That if I now, okay, 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 So now if I run this thing, the main method bb equals to m1, if I try to call bb dot and then m2, right? Now it should be accessible, right? Because b class extending class a class is having m2, right? M2 has a protected access, right? So M2 can be accessed from class B, right? That thing we are doing right now, right?
Yeah, through M1.
Yes, through M1. Yeah, through M1 method. Cool. Okay, make it M2. All right. So that would be better, right? Okay. So B dot M2. Okay. No. We have to make some changes, right? Again, revert it. M1 only, right? So if I'm trying to call M1, we know that it will work perfectly fine, right? Because M1 method will internally call the M2 of the protected method, right? But B also has this thing, right? B also has M2 method inside it, right? Isn't it?
Uh,
I can access, right? I can access M2 method. See, super dot M2 I can access, right? Super dot
yeah,
M4 I cannot access, right? Because it's a private method, right? Cannot access, private access cannot access outside the package. With
yeah,
M3 also I cannot access, right? Why? Because it's not public, it's default, and default access cannot be accessed outside the package, right?
yeah,
But M2 I can access because it's a protected method, and protected says that you can access within the class, but you can access outside the class, but with the condition that only within the child classes you can access it. Cool.
yeah.
So it has M2 as well, right? So when we inherit, so we have inherited the M2 method, right? So if I try to call b dot m2, what will happen? B dot m2, if I try to run it, then there will be an error. The reason is the m2 method, again the same thing, right? The same concept apply over here. When this a class m2 methods, right, we have extended it, right? B class extended it, so it is inside here, right? But whenever we inherit a class, it comes to us whenever we inherit a protected method, it comes to us as a private. It acts as a private visibility, and the private visibility says that okay, it's not inside the B class, right? It's not inside the B class. Okay, this thing says that it's not inside it's inside the B class because it comes with the private visibility. So that's why only B M1 method is visible, right? Even if I try to forcefully access M2 method, then it will going to throw me an error. That's what's happening earlier as well when we are trying to access it, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Now is anyone having any doubts? See, the thing is it is confusing, but we need to know that whenever we are trying to access, the difference between one thing, when you are trying to extend a class which has a protected method and outside the package, then you get the accessibility of that method, right? But only inside you, it comes as a private method. The accessibility that you get, it's sort of private. You cannot expose that method to other person, right? If you are able to expose that method to the other people, then what's the benefit of making it protected, right? Then it makes no sense, right? If anyone can access it, then it's public, right? If you allow it to access here directly, right, from this. Okay, what change I made? Okay, all right. So if I allow this, right, accessing directly m2 methods, and if m2 method, this a m2 method, if I allow it directly calling this thing, then isn't it become the public method because I am accessing it outside the method, right?
yeah, yeah,
So the private protected methods can be accessed within the child classes, but its visibility will be like private, right? Then again, if I extend the class to C, then the again B1 method will be accessible. B2 method will be M2 method will be accessible inside C as well. But inside C as well, if I create an object of C as well, then C dot M2 I won't be able to access because its visibility will be as private. So only just to access it, I'm providing it. Internally, if you want to use it, you can use it, but you cannot expose that method to anyone else. Cool.
yeah,
This is the only question which is very important in terms of access modifier, right? Because it is confusing because everyone just reads about the reads about this definition, and the definition is similarly like this only, right? Then this thing becomes the issue. All right, so we have completed the protected. Now the final thing in the access modifier is the visibility. Okay, one more thing inside the notes. See, the thing in which I have written, it's in the increasing order, right? If I'll say that access privilege to, what is the access privilege, right? And access privilege sequences, like public is the most open access privilege, right? Is the most lenient, right? And then the protected is the little bit stricter, right? Isn't it?
Yes.
And then what is the then lenient one?
Private.
Come again?
Private.
Default. Because
Okay.
default says within the package and private says within the class, so default will be more lenient, right?
Yeah.
And then private, right? There is no one more stricter than private. Cool.
Okay.
So this is the access privilege from most lenient to most strict, right? So now the question arises that when we override, okay, my bad, protected access interview issue, right? Okay, it's A over here, why B here? Okay, let me delete this A. Okay, I want to delete this, yes, and let me just put it here. Override access privilege. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to write a class A. Cool. And what I'm going to do is I will write two methods, right? One is this, okay, m1 method, right? A m1 method. Cool. And it's a public method, and let's say the next one will be protected void or default. Let's say default, right? For default, what I need to do, write nothing, right? So void and m2 and sys out a m2 method, right? And this method is default. Cool. Any doubt still here? No, I guess, right? It's way too simple. All right, so what I'm going to do, I will create a object of a, right? Okay, no, my bad, right now, not at least now. So I will create a b class, right? So I will extend the class a. Cool. Anyone having any doubts till now? And I'll just copy paste in this code here as well, right? Just going to make it b dot m1 and b dot m1, right? And just to make sure that I will be able to, it's overridden, I will write the override, right? Anyone any doubts till now? No, right? There is a class b with m1 m2 method, there is a class a m1 m2 method, and okay, all right. So okay, so we have m1 method public, m2 method default, right? Both in a and b, right? And we am inside the same package, so I will create an object of b equals to new b, right? So I'm overriding these methods, right? Override is written, right? So if I call b dot m1 and b dot m2, what will happen? These methods will be printed, right? B is public and b1 is public and b2 is default, right? Clear till now, right? It's we are doing the overriding concept, but overriding concept is not happening over here, right? Normal method call is being done, right? Clear till now?
Yeah.
All right. see, now what I want to do, I want to increase the access privilege and decrease the access privilege, right? I will try to increase and decrease the access privilege. LEDG. So okay, privilege. Okay, we'll see the spelling decrease. Okay, so we will see now if, and okay, what's the sequence of the access privileges? Over here we just have seen public is the most lenient, right? So let's try to make public method protected when I want to override it. Cool. See, this concept is not of oops, even though we are using it with the oops overriding, but this is related to Java only, because these access modifiers are with the Java itself, right? So now if I want to modify the access privileges and I'm inside this class B, see, this method was public in A, right? So what will happen if I will try to make it protected, right? If I want to make it protected, right? What will happen if I want to make it protected? So over here what I'm doing, I'm overriding the method with more stricter access privilege, right? And over here this is default, right? This used to be default. And what if I will make it public? What if I will make it public? What will be the output? If I remove these two things, I'm trying to increase and decrease the access privilege, right? Over here I'm trying to increase the access privilege, decrease the access privilege. Earlier it was public, I'm trying to use the stricter protected access privilege. And over here it was a default and I want to increase it from default to public access privilege. What will happen if I just uncomment the code and try to run the code? Okay, let's first talk about this one, increasing the access privilege. Is it allowed, not allowed?
Yeah, this will be accessible.
Okay, you are saying that if I remove this and run this, then it should be allowed, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And this one?
That should not be allowed because we're using the dot operator to access it and becomes private outside.
Okay, it's not regarding the protected, it's it was public, right? Let's make it default as well. Okay, now I made it default. Now
It should still not be accessible because default is more stricter than protected.
what does default say? Default say that you can access the default method within the package, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Is this runner within the package?
Okay,
Both
yeah,
classes are in the same package, right?
yeah, yeah. Then it should be accessible.
The answer is correct for this, wrong for this. The thing is, it's not related to the access modifier, it's related to another concept. Like, see, in Java, if I try to run this, right? If I try to run this, now what will happen? M1, because I have committed out that M1 part, right? So now the B2 method access privilege I have increased, right? So if we want to increase the access privilege of a method when we are overriding it, it is allowed in Java, right? But if I do this thing, right, and try to run it, then there will be an error, right? Attempting to assign a weaker access privilege. It was public first. Okay, it is default, right? It is default, right? I haven't added anything, it will be treated as default. So it says that when inside A it was public, and when you were trying and we were trying to assign a weaker access privilege, right? So I cannot do it, right? So I need to, so in Java you can in the notes we can mention directly that this is the access privilege part, right? We can assign, we cannot assign, we cannot assign a weaker access, okay, privilege while overriding the method, while other way around is allowed. Cool. Got this thing? The reason is, I mean, it's not like this is random stuff, right? If I am a developer, I have created a method public, right? And I have provided a jar to someone. I want that method to be accessed by everyone, right? I don't want someone comes in between and says, like, if I'm writing an open source code, I want it to be used by everyone. If someone else just use my jar and try to create a its own, I mean, try to use it for its own firm, and he converted my methods, every method, he overrided my methods and made them protected or private, right? Does it make sense? Now my method, whatever code I have written, won't be accessible to other people, right, if they are using his jar. But cause assigning a weaker access privilege is not allowed if he is using my jar and my jar is saying that the class will be public and the methods are public inside that. Then if he is using my jar and creating his own jar using my jar, then if he exposes his jar to someone else, my method will still be accessible to those people who is consuming someone else's jar, who's used my jar inside his project. Okay, so is this sentence make, I mean, is this thing make sense to you? Have you used the Maven or Gradle projects? Have you worked with these Maven and Gradle projects, multi-module Maven or Gradle projects? Okay, I guess no. See, whenever a microservice we create, right, there are multiple way. Okay, this is a part of Spring Boot and inter microservice communications. So when there is a microservice A and there is a microservice B, how will they communicate? One way is I will directly call the REST service, right? I write the code to hit the API, right? Other way around is the person whose microservice is needs to be called, right? He will create a jar, he will write a code, and the other person he will share it with other people. That okay, you just import my jar and then call a single method, and everything else will be done by its own. So that's how thing works, and that's what I was trying to tell. That if there is a jar A, jar B, what is a jar?
Collection of class files.
Yes, it's a simple collection of classes, right? We are also using the jars, right? We are also using, whenever, even if, when we are writing this thing, we are using the jars, right? Even if we write at a string, I mean, please be more technical per people, guys. So over here I'm also using the external lib jars, right? This is all our jars, it's of Coreto. So cause the thing is it's libs, these will be all jars, right? So the thing is, if this over in this project I'm not using multiple things, so we have a very less amount of external libraries, that would be jar itself, because we are working in the Java. So the the different softwares or the codes that you want to use will be in the collections, right? Jar is nothing but a collection of the classes. So if I want to create something and I want to share it with someone else, then I will create my jar, and I am also using someone else's jar, right? Because we are using Spring Boot jars, and over here we are using Java's collection of classes, right? So this string class we haven't used, right? So someone has provided us the jars, right? So what we are seeing over here, we are inside the lang package, right? So how this lang package is available to us? How this lang package available to us? In the form of jar itself, right? Okay, so it's inside the jar, so I cannot just directly go and open it in my terminal. So these things, these collections, whatever we write, it's shared to us inside the jars. So I was just trying to provide an example of the real life. But if you haven't, and if anyone haven't worked with the microservice architecture, especially with the multi-modules Maven or Gradle projects, then it will be a little harder to explain. But all right, the thing is, it just, if I have exposed something and made it public, I am the author, right? I am the author, so I will say that okay, my this thing, my particular method needs to be public. So no one else should have the right to make it less accessible to others, right? But the other way around is allowed, right? If I have exposed my jar to someone else, I mean, if I have exposed my code to someone else, or if I allowed someone to use my code, or if I sold my code to someone, then it's on him, right? He can, if he want to sell it or he wants to make it public, then it's on him, right? He can do it anything. He has just bought the code with from me, So it's on him that if he wants to make it accessible to others or not, whether he wants to make that code public to or not. So that's the concept that we use over here while overriding the while overriding a method. So we don't allow the weaker access privilege to get assigned, but the other way around is allowed. You can provide the stronger access privilege, right? And how we decide which is stronger and which is weaker by using this thing, right? We can check it, and even this thing also makes sense, right? Clear? Or anyone having any doubts?